Hey, this is Matthew Harvey here with the 12 o'clock siren recording live at the 903 Broadband Studios on the Cowboy Corner on the southeast side of the downtown Leonard Square. Across the table from me is not James Hartley, it is Kevin TBG Cornhole Moore.
How's it going, guys?
Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
James couldn't be with us today. He is overseas in Eastern Europe doing some military work, secret military work that we're publicizing on a podcast here. But that's too bad James can't be with us, but we are going to talk about something that I recently got into a little a bind out in the field with some chiggers. And I was like, you know what? This would be an interesting conversation to talk to a chigger specialist. So without further ado, we have Mr. Bryant McDowell of Texas AgriLife Extension. He is an extension program specialist on the line with us. Welcome, Bryant.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to come here and talk chiggers. You probably did not expect to find that one in your email inbox. Am I right?
Yeah, it came at the perfect time because I actually had a little ordeal here probably like 2 weeks ago when I first got contacted. So it was perfect timing. I knew that they're out. It sounds like it's been a pretty busy season for the chiggers.
Yeah.
I've had a couple colleagues here let me know, they were out doing programs on the weekend with their kids or whatever, and they got into some chiggers. And so it sounds like they're being pretty prolific, which, I mean, high humidity, high temperatures, so the perfect environment. So
that's what I understand is where they live. Now, before we get too much into chiggers, you're with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Program. Can you tell us about what you guys do? Let's get all that as a foundation here and hear about what you're doing in North Texas.
Yeah, so I'm an extension program specialist. I work in integrated pest management and urban entomology, so really insects, other arthropods in the human environment, and that can be urban areas. It can even be rural areas. I mean, you still get insects in your house no matter where you live. So I really take all of the information from the university level and I kind of bring it down to the public eye. I work a lot with pest management professionals, training them on different just insect-related things, as well as pesticide safety, and then integrated pest management programs, utilizing basically all things. I'm going to say non-chemical before we get into, an actual chemical approach. That would be something more like broad spectrum, right?
Yeah. So are you guys researching with insects? What are y'all doing with the information you're getting in-house?
So it really depends. We can have different independent studies. We can do studies with different like pesticide manufacturers and things like that. Really, it's more about monitoring and then just taking a lot of the research really, is done with students. And so taking those newfound data and kind of translating it to something that's a little more digestible for the public is really what we're concerned with.
Okay. Let's get into chiggers. First question I've got, why do they exist? Why do chiggers even, we're like mosquitoes, what is their pecking order in the biosphere?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially, whenever I don't think any one person is going to say, oh, I love chiggers, right? But in all reality, it's one stage of the chigger. Well, I guess let's back up. What is a chigger, right? So it is a mite, and those mites typically, I say typically, they're only going to infest humans at that larval stage. So they've got 4 different stages in their life cycle: the egg, the larva, the nymph, and the adult. And so the nymph and adults, they're actually considered beneficial. They're feeding on different insects, insect eggs, different things down in the soil. As larvae, they're typically not. I mean, they they don't just go after humans, right? We're kind of a bad host, especially because we are very hyper aware of things on our bodies. We are able to kind of scratch. Obviously, we take showers. We've got washcloths that are abrasive to the skin, so that knocks off the mite. It's not advantageous for them to really feed on us. They're mostly going to be on different mammals, rodents, birds, amphibians in the environment, and only in that larval stage. So as the nymph and the adult, progresses through their life cycle, they're actually not feeding on any of the vertebrates that we're talking about.
Well, I didn't realize that. That's news to me about the only feeding in the, what'd you say, the nymph stage?
The larval stage.
Larval
Yeah.
stage. Huh. Okay. We've all caught them most likely out here in a hayfield. Where are you looking for, and where are you picking them up at in the field and around town?
Yeah. So hot spots for chiggers are going to be any sort of kind of lush, uh, shaded area where like the soil is shaded by any sort of dense vegetation. In my experience, they really like that transitional area between like the maintained, grassland and then that kind of prairie type field.
Yeah.
Uh, they do like that, taller, thicker vegetation. Um, like all arthropods, water is really important. So if you're kind of decreasing the humidity, if you're increasing the temperature, so things such as like mowing down your grass or trimming your trees, increasing that sunlight so you're getting less humidity, that's going to be kind of something that's going to deter them. But in general, those kind of transitional zones.
More sunlight, less chiggers.
Correct. Yeah.
So creek beds, banks, and things like that, they're going to be much more abundant.
Yeah. So that kind of leads into the two. So we have several species of chigger mite in Texas. Really, only two of them are going to be important for humans. One of them is kind of what I just described, where they're going to be in our urban areas. It doesn't really need to be like a swampy or very very wet environment. The other one kind of prefers that boggy, uh, swamp or moist environment. So either way, but water is very important, right?
Now, there's a lot of swampy, moist areas in the states, but I've only heard about them around Texas. Is that because they're only around here, or are they much more abundant around the nation?
So I believe that they are prolific all across the U.S. It's probably just more talked about. The further south you go, the more extended our seasonal heat is, and so
Conditions.
right. So you're probably getting more generations per year. I want to say that I saw it was like up to 4 generations per year. They can be, if the temperature is right, they'll be active that entire time. Um, so their life cycle is anywhere from like 2 to 12 months, and that all depends on those environmental factors.
So that sounds like they could probably start wreaking havoc maybe late March through
Yeah, I think
early
it's
November, I guess.
yeah. It's definitely safe to say late spring to uh, early spring to late summer
Yeah,
here in Texas. The
yeah.
further south you go, they get temperatures over 80. I mean, even in that March area. So
Now we're calling them chiggers. Uh, Is that the name for them, or are there other regional nicknames
yeah,
for them?
so I found a couple. Chigger is what I grew up with and always knew, but really chigger is only referring to that one larval stage that's a nuisance for us. They do get confused with jigger, so instead of ch at the beginning, it's a j, and that's actually a type of flea.
Like the bar
Uh,
tool?
yeah, so that's totally different. Other names that I saw, I thought I had written them down, and now of course I'm going through notes and I can't find any of them. But people will call them like mites or concrete mites, and concrete mites are actually different. They can look similar in their adult stages. They're both kind of red colored, but the chigger mite is going to be more of like a velvety, textured. I know that sounds weird to say, but honestly, if you look at the adult, it has like a velvet uh, uh, texture to it, almost like it's covered in very fine hairs.
Hmm. They are hideous creatures.
It depends on who you ask, I guess.
Yeah. I assume you have some sort of affinity for insects, right?
You know, I guess so. I definitely, I'm not going to say that I love chiggers, right? Nobody,
Sure.
I've had experiences with them. My very, not my first, but in my professional career, my first uh, incident happened, gosh, like 10 years ago. I was doing some field work, doing some mosquito collections. So I'd have to be up at sunrise and sunset checking
Mm.
these traps. I had to go through a really, a heavily uh, grown out area, and I got chiggers that first week. And then since then, I've been very on top of it. If I'm going out to the field, I make sure I've got my long pants, my long shirt, my boots are over my pants, and we can go on about ways to avoid them in the future. But I let my guard down this past, gosh, it was like 3 weeks ago. I was pulling some weeds. We've got an area that we're trying to kind of maintain over at the office, and sure enough, I got into some chiggers. And
Yeah.
when it happens, you take note.
Yeah, well, you don't find out till it's too late.
Basically, yeah. Once you begin reacting, it's said and done. The damage is done. And we can talk a little bit about what exactly happens if you want, from the time that they get onto the body, uh,
Yep.
and then
We,
when we start reacting. So
we will get there. You mentioned mosquitoes. Do you guys work closely with Dallas in the was it the abatement division or whatever they do for spraying?
yeah,
Abatement, is that the right word?
yes, yeah,
Okay.
mosquito. There's there's different groups. So I work really with that pest management industry, and then I think what you're describing is more of like the public health side, where it's
Yeah.
more of a run situation. So there is some crossover. We're actually trying to kind of increase that because you've got people who are um, controlling mosquitoes in like I said in that public health setting, right, where it's like statewide programs. But then you have the average homeowner who goes to a pest management company and says, "Hey, I have a problem with mosquitoes," and they're really only controlling, a very small area.
Hmm. Um, Back to prevention of chiggers. Did they respond to your typical bug sprays?
So if you're referring to anything that's like for example,
Off.
mesquite, yeah, off, uh, those deep woods, those all contain DEET, DEET.
Yep.
Um, so those, yes, you can use those whenever you are heading out, just like you normally would. Mind you, those only have a certain amount of time that they are actively working, so reapplication may be needed. That's something that you have to look at the label.
Yeah.
There's different concentrations and all that. Other options, there's like permethrin dips that you can do for your clothes, where you can actually treat your clothes with the residual insecticide, and those last a little longer. They'll last through multiple washes. The important thing is that you're not putting that directly on your skin, right? You're treating your clothes. You can then combine those treatments with a DEET spray, for example, for added protection. And then there's other, types of insecticides. You really just have to find something that's labeled specifically for chiggers. So different uh, different repellents that are maybe like plant based, for example, uh, could work, but you would want to check just to see if it's labeled on there.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Was my grandma abusing me back when I was about 5 years old, and she'd give me bleach baths after I got a bunch of chiggers all over me, or was she doing the right thing?
Uh, uh,
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, probably.
yeah, I think her intentions were good.
It was.
Uh, Probably not successful. It's actually funny that I went and visited with my grandma the other day, and she had her feet in a bath, and I was, what are you doing? And she goes, I'm taking a bleach bath for my feet. They were itching, and I'm like, oh no. It must be a grandma thing. I don't know.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I've heard of the bleach baths. I've heard of vinegar baths. I think vinegar is probably a little less detrimental to your skin. But like we mentioned, that once that larval chigger gets on you, they kind of explore you for a while, anywhere from let's say up to 3 hours before they find an area that they want to feed on.
That long?
They love tight areas.
Yeah.
So areas where your socks, like around your ankles, any area like your groin area where you got like underwear, waistbands.
Wet and warm, right?
Yeah, they like that. And they tend to stick to the more like the thinner areas of skin. So like under your armpits, the back of the legs. So with that being said, by the time you're itching and realizing, oh no, I got into something, that's a reaction from them already biting. They've secreted their saliva, which has these digestive enzymes. They're not feeding on blood. So what they're doing is they are destroying all those skin cells, and then that kind of, they're able to kind of suck that up, those juices up. So by the time you're reacting, they've probably already fed and fallen off. The best bet is once you're in an area like that, you should change clothes immediately and launder them. I recommend drying them first. It sounds counterproductive, but that heat treatment really is going to kill any sort of insects or ticks or anything that's on you. And then taking a shower as soon as possible and being sure to scrub with a washcloth to dislodge any mites or anything that may be on you.
So you say it's their saliva that is causing the incredible itch?
Right, yeah. They have very delicate, sharp mouth parts, and so they'll stick that into the skin, and they kind of secrete into that a digestive enzyme. And so that digestive enzyme actually ruptures all of your skin cells, and that reaction is what you're feeling. So contrary to the belief that they're actually burrowing down into your skin, they don't do that. However, we all react differently. So let's say you're a particular person who swells up from any sort of insect bite. Your skin can actually swell and kind of envelop the mite, which kind of gives this false illusion, right, that they're burrowing down, but that's not actually what they're doing.
Why does it feel so good to scratch it?
Yeah, that's a question that I don't know that I can answer, but You're absolutely right. I can tell you
it's the opposite of poison ivy.
Yeah. Well, the problem with alleviating that itch, right, scratching that itch, is that you will open up the skin, and that has the potential to then get, a
infection
secondary
and scar and
right.
Yeah.
And chigger bites will last. Most, for example, if you're getting bitten by mosquitoes, right, it's like up to 3 days maybe that you're going to see anything. You've got a chigger bite. I mean, you've got multiple. I have like 30 bites on me, and you can see them for a week up to 2 weeks. They're prevalent. They're there, and if you're scratching them, they're going to be like open, wounds.
Now this explains my underwear track marks.
Exactly.
It's a lot of scratching. I'm just kidding, folks. How long do they last, typically, with or without scratching?
So I would say it really depends on the person. As much as we say, like, don't scratch, it's hard. Of the 2 times that I've gotten chiggers, during the day it's fine. You can actively think, yeah, I'm not going to scratch that. But whenever you're trying to get a good night's sleep, like you wake up scratching, right?
Yep.
I would say that it's safe to assume up to 2 weeks. It's probably more in the range of like 1 week that you're going to actually see the bites. Uh, but it really just depends on how much you're messing with them.
Understood. We touched on some wives' tales with the bleach. Do you know of any legit wives' tales that seem to have eased the pain or work?
So I've heard of the bleach method. I've heard of nail polish. I've heard of Vaseline, vinegar. This is all assuming that the chigger is still attached to the body. Uh, the Vaseline and the nail polish, uh, that's assuming that they're burrowing down into the skin, which really isn't the case. So I'm going to say that you could probably scratch those. Um, Really, like I said, the biggest thing that you want to do is once you're in an area like that, getting those clothes off. Well, but before you even worry about that, making sure that you're wearing loose fitted, tightly woven clothes, something that they're not going to be able to kind of go through. It's going to take them longer to explore that area. Um, Once you are out of the field, showering as soon as possible and ensuring that you're scrubbing your skin well with a washcloth just to dislodge any potential mites that are there. And taking care of those kind of looser skin areas, the ankles, up on the top of the legs, armpit area.
That's rough stuff.
Yeah,
You want to switch gears into the ticks, the tick realm?
yeah, we can. Do you have
It is certainly tick season as well. I've been
Oh yeah.
doing some chainsawing and in and around trees, and of course that's the best place to pick them up. And I have picked up a couple. So I hate. It's like the worst feeling in the world. Finding a little tick on you, either crawling or if it's already bit, it's nasty. It's pretty gross. So when do we? Are they pretty much the same as the chigger as far as warm, damp, and uh, no sunlight areas?
Yes, exactly. They with any really arthropod, that harsh sunlight is going to be their enemy. Um, you mentioned. Let me backtrack. So you mentioned talking about how it wasn't feeling good. I had taken some notes down that I wanted to mention because you're right. There's like a psychological component, right,
Oh
where
yeah.
people going to worry about it. They worry about blood loss. There's different toxins associated with them. Of course, we've got tick transmitted.
Lyme disease, right?
Correct. So there's always a worry, and ticks are pretty complicated in their transmission cycles. They're all different. Um, Certain species are associated with certain pathogens. They can acquire them in different ways, whether that's the mom. Basically, it's called transovarily. So through laying eggs, can pass on pathogens to her offspring, or depending on how many uh, different hosts they have, right? One, two, or three hosts. If they pick up a disease from their very first host, they're going to have that pathogen, or I should say that disease-causing pathogen. They're going to have that pathogen, for the rest of their life. So it gets complicated when you start talking about, disease transmission for sure. I would say that if you are in those kind of tick areas, and even if you're not, I mean, mind you, if you're in an urban area, there's still wildlife roaming in your backyard. It's possible that you have some high areas, especially, I'm trying to think like under a deck, around the house area, any sort of pet housing that you have. Um, some people have like dog houses and whatnot that are unkept. So those can all be hot spots. And so really just making sure that you've kind of knocked down those grassy areas, exposing the soil to sunlight, is your best bet.
Very nice. The dogs come back with the ticks on them all the time.
Oh yeah.
We give them tick and flea, obviously. They still get on there, but don't stay. If they bite in. But is there anything humans can do? Is there something we can eat? A lot of garlic or something like that to repel them?
I have never been asked that question, and that is,
I figured garlic would be the thing, just off the top of
yeah,
my head.
yeah, garlic or yeah, something super oniony. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you can go run, roll around in the wild chives or something before you go
Yeah,
out.
we've got those too out here.
Which I mean, a lot of those insect repellents or arthropod repellents are plant based, and so you'll see a lot of like rosemary and lemongrass and citronella. And I don't know the true efficacy on ticks. Um, it, it- they it's safe to say that whenever you're out in an exposed area, you should always do a tick check whenever you're coming back, both to yourself and the dog. It's a little silly to kind of get up in front of people and demonstrate what that looks like because it can be quite intimate. But get you a little mirror because those things can go unnoticed for
Yeah,
a long time. The longer they feed, with a lot of the ticks, that that length of feeding is important with their pathogen transmission.
gotcha. So a fresh bite wouldn't be as dangerous as possibly a 2 week long
Yeah,
full
right,
tick situation.
right,
Because I guess they
exactly.
cycled that all that blood through you and through them. Does I guess some of the blood goes into them and comes back out and goes back into you. That's the kind of
Well,
the deal.
like
Or do
the
they just keep a little bit?
like salivary transmission there going on too. So
Gotcha.
even the blood feeding, right? They're still injecting different uh, uh,
Bodily fluids,
yeah, right. I would say like
germ.
their saliva can, contain maybe blood thinners or things like that,
Gotcha.
numbing agents. You got to think too, yeah. If you're blood feeding by nature, right, most things are going to feel you piercing their skin. So you've got to kind of have a way to to counteract
So
that.
that's how it's done. I always wondered that.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I don't know that it's safe to do that blanket statement on everything, but
Yeah.
yes,
Huh. So a little bit of local anesthetic, basically, and then they just take a bite.
right.
Huh. Learned two things so far. Fresh things, anyway. Um, I typically get them when I'm messing around with trees, knocking branches, going through woods and stuff. They live in trees, I assume.
Uh, I don't know about trees so much. So if you're ever walking through those areas, I think the majority of people are going to pick them up whenever they're walking through like the taller grass, any sort of bushes. I'm sure those trees that have those kind of lower branches. The ticks do this. They have this behavior where they're kind of going to go onto an exposed tip of a plant, and they
Yeah.
just kind of wait their forelegs. They wait for something to kind of walk by, and then they just attach,
Yep.
and that's how, yeah, that's how they choose their host.
I seem
So,
to pick them up
uh,
in like the a ruffle of clothing or the collar of your shirt or something like that.
yeah, I always get them. So if I try not to wear pants that have that seam on them because I feel like they always get in that seam on like the side of like your blue jeans, for example.
Yeah. It's like walking up to somebody stealing your car. When you get a tick on you, like, hey
Right,
man,
right.
get out of here.
Get out of here.
That's my blood.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yep.
well, one other thing with ticks, right? So whenever you do have a tick on you, it removal is very simple. You don't need to go and do all of those are other things that I've heard. The bleach, the vinegar, the nail polish remover, making sure that you twist the head. You don't have to do any of that. Just get a simple pair of forceps. You grab them as far down at the base as you can and just pull straight up, and that will take care of it. Whenever you get into the twisting and you start fidgeting with it, you're chancing, ripping off the mouth parts into your skin, which again is going to, uh, cause that secondary infection, which is what you're wanting to avoid.
Gotcha. We've picked our fair share of ticks off dogs. and then end up burning them. Is there any advantage to burning them versus any other way of killing them?
Burn them dead if you want them. I've picked ticks off of dogs before. I had a tick problem with my dogs in college, and that's we'd find engorged females and pop them into a vial, and then we were morbid. We would shake up the vials really hard until they popped.
Look at you.
Yeah, that was just like a I don't
This guy's awesome.
know, college boy curiosity, I guess. But
Well, they're hideous, nasty creatures too.
well, and the size difference between an unengorged and engorged female is very striking. So if you
Right.
ever if you haven't seen that and you stumble upon an engorged female, I mean, it looks like a skin growth, like a big mole, or
Yeah.
I mean, it looks worse than that, to be honest.
Like a
I don't know.
purple, like a purple thumb.
Yeah.
Like if you
they-
smash your thumb and it turned purple, it looks like that.
Oh yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, there's not much more disgusting than a. You said enlarged. What'd you say? Enlarged. Engorged.
Oh yes, yes.
An engorged tick. Yeah, they are gross. Our dogs used to come up with so many of them. Ugh. Picking those things if they happen to pop. Oh my lord.
Yeah, or like you're just innocently scratching your dog and you feel something like dogs get their little old spots and whatnot. So making sure that you're aware of what your dog has and what's not normal.
Yeah. Those tick medicines are pretty good though.
Yes, flea tick meds are very important.
Do you have a favorite arthropod?
Ooh, I do.
Okay.
I love all sorts of insects and funny things, but Dobson flies are my favorite insects. I'm from Central Texas. We did a lot of camping growing up, and so you can find these along like the creek bed, the stream beds. As larvae, they're down in the stream. They're aquatic, but as adults, they look amazing. They're pretty
Yeah.
long. They get up to like 3-4 inches. The males have these insane mandibles that are tusk-like.
Yeah. Like beetle-like. I'm looking at a picture of them.
Yeah. So they're sexually dimorphic here. The females are going to have more of your kind of stout mandibles that would actually be able to bite if you tried to mess with it. They're not venomous or anything, but if you've never seen one and you come across a male, I mean that was probably my introduction to like entomology,
Yeah.
like a junior high school where I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Are they related to the dragonfly?
no, not at all actually.
Kind of look like them.
Yeah, I can see how one would make that comparison. Similar in that the dragonfly is still going to have that like nymphal stage in the aquatic region, and then as adults they're terrestrial. So definitely similar life habitats, but morphologically, I guess, different. Yes.
Nice. In college and even professional career, have you done any sort of specific research with other insects of note, like a big research or big projects?
Yeah. So for my master's program, I did a population genetics study on the tawny crazy ant, basically looking at different nest sites throughout Texas and then throughout the southeastern United States to compare those nests and see how workers and queens were related to one another. And essentially we found that they're what you would refer to as a unicolonial species. So most ants are going to kind of defend their nest territories pretty well, even within the same species. When you get into these invasive ants, they tend to all get along quite well, which can be quite destructive whenever you're talking about a very intense population that has the potential to cover, acres and acres of land with no sort of way to control them.
So you know about some ants extensively then.
I would say so, yes.
Nice. You want to talk a little ants? That's probably what people care about more than chiggers and ticks.
Yeah, no, we can. I mean, I know I always get questions about fire ants, and so
Yeah, that's where we want to start, clearly.
yeah, I would say so. And I haven't heard much about tawnies. This was back in 2015 when I started that project, and so they were pretty big up until 2018, 2019. I think that their populations have kind of dwindled, but the fire ant has been here since the late 1930s. They were introduced into Alabama, and they've pretty much spread all throughout the South. Um, I'll say, as far as control goes with extension, we tell everyone to practice what we call that Texas two-step method. So if you do an early baiting, they've got different granular baits that you can apply. Those are really good at suppressing a population over a large area. And then if you've got problems later on in the season, you can always do spot treatments. There's different formulations you can buy, whether it's a granular insecticide that you water in or a dust that you're going to use. All of those are going to be effective. Keep in mind, so I mentioned this like unicoloniality, or even the term super colony. So just because you're, treating a population of ants on your property, your next door neighbor, for example, could have an infestation of fire ants, and they spend most of their time down in the soil pretty deep. And so you might have little nests pop up, especially after a heavy rain. And that doesn't mean that you were effective or anything. It just means that they're kind of flooding in from your neighbors. So community-wide programs can be very effective at suppressing the population over very large areas, especially in like those residential suburban areas.
Huh. How did the ant movie hold up, in your opinion?
How did the ant movie? Is that what you said?
Yeah, An Ant's Life.
That
was the name of the movie, right? Yeah.
Well, okay, there's two, right? I guess there's Ants and A Bug's Life, right?
Oh yeah, Bug's Life, but there was also Ants.
Yes. Ants I enjoyed because they actually have 6 legs. They've got 3 pairs of legs in that film.
Okay.
Also, watching that film as an adult, you get so much insight on these like dirty adult jokes that you over as a child.
Yeah.
I would choose Ants over A Bug's Life. Bug's Life's still great. One of my all-time favorites.
Well, on the topic, I saw the Bee Movie in the theaters, and I thought it was pretty fantastic for the same reasons.
Exactly. I'm like, you know what? Who wants to watch a woman falling in love with a bee? Me.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Do you dabble in bees by chance?
I would like to in the future. I haven't done much here. Molly Keck down in San Antonio, I know, does a lot of bee work. And then we also have the bee lab out in College Station with A&M. So those are good contacts if people are wanting information.
Cool. We've touched on a few things here. Do you have anything that you'd like to promote? Do you have a book or a website or your program or anything like that?
Yeah, we can. So I will. Here, let me. I do monitor a website. I've been slowly getting it up and running. We still have a couple things to work on, but it's called Insects in the City. So it's citybugs.tamu.edu, and that's just kind of a blog area where I'll post updates. If there's ever any sort of outbreaks that I'm getting multiple emails on, a specific insect or a specific problem, I'll usually write a little blog post and post it there.
That's cool.
And then we do have 2 different podcasts with AgriLife Extension. So if you're kind of the homeowner / pest management professional who's really concerned with like structural pests, not just insects, it could be, birds, rodents, things like that. Unwanted Guests is one podcast, and you can listen to that on Apple Podcasts or the Spotify app. The other one is Bugs by the Yard, and that is more for your everyday, just common insect curiosity. It's more for your everyday listener. A lot more diversity there. So
Fantastic titles.
yeah, they were established before I got into this position, but I must say I'm very pleased with them.
Very cool. So we're gonna do 5 questions with you. We're just gonna draw 5 questions out of the old 12 o'clock siren jar here and get your feedback. Random questions about all kinds of topics. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, I got the first one.
Kick it off.
Have you ever been overseas?
Have I ever been overseas?
Yes.
I did
Anywhere besides America?
I would say I did a study abroad in Dominica, which is a Caribbean island, but that's as far across the sea as I've ventured.
Right on.
Dominica?
Yes, yeah, it's a very small island. You're looking at South America, there's Venezuela at the very north, and then I think it's like the 3rd or 4th island up from there.
Very cool. What'd you study there? What was your work?
So I did 2 different, small projects. One of them was the arthropod diversity attracted to carrion, so rotting flesh, essentially. I used beef liver then. And then another one was just a diversity, like a beetle diversity of the island. So we went and we set a bunch of different types of traps and just looked at the different beetles that were attracted to them.
Right on. The roads life can take you on.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It was interesting. I really enjoyed it.
So is that, I'm looking at a map, is that just south of like the U.S. Virgin Islands?
Yeah, let me double check it.
Yeah, you're just north of Venezuela, out in the...
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's very small. I want to say it's like 5 by 9 miles.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Big hills. Looks like the Virgin Islands, so it's obviously part of that chain.
Yeah, it's got some really beautiful terrain. There's a lake that sits in a dormant volcano called Boiling Lake there that you get to go kind of look and explore through.
Very cool.
Plenty of...
Very cool. I'm going to have to go there now. This question, I expect a good answer. Do you collect anything?
Insect-wise? Or...
well, just in general, but I'm kind of expecting insects now. I didn't put that together when when it was drawn.
Insects. I've got a whole setup, so I'll do little insect trips. I don't even call them. Most people are gonna call this just hiking, right? But when I hike, I take my insect net and a couple bags and see what I can find. And I got a pinning station, and so I like to do go to Hobby Lobby, get those nice
shadow box,
like whatnot, and pin up stuff. They make really great gifts. They're also just nice to look at in the office. I actually have a collection that I made in my undergrad. Gosh, I probably made it in 2013, and it's still here hanging up in my office.
Very cool. What pins best?
What pins best?
As far as the attractiveness.
Oh, butterflies.
Yeah.
Okay. People are most interested in looking at a good mounted butterfly or moth.
Yeah.
Large, like, or something.
I would imagine big butterfly doesn't appreciate that too much.
Yeah, probably not. But
they are too pretty, right?
They are. They're so difficult to catch that it's almost, it's what's the word? I don't want to say worth it, but if you're able to get a very large butterfly, I think that you just, pinning that specimen and being able to for years to come. I mean, those insect collections can last. I actually was at a extension office not long ago where I was looking at a butterfly collection that was made in like 1963. And it still looked, as pristine as ever. It was amazing.
I was walking the dog the other day, and this white butterfly passed me, and it had the most insane flight pattern I've ever seen. I mean, it seemed to be going 3 feet to the left, 3 feet to the right, just no finesse to the flight path
Yeah,
whatsoever.
and it's difficult to predict that whenever you're trying to,
Yeah.
get them into a net.
It's crazy how far they can move, and it seems completely uncontrolled.
Yep.
All right. You got the next question? Was that on me?
I'll get you.
Go for it.
All right, boss. When was the last time you were on stage?
The last time I was on stage.
For any reason whatsoever. You might have been doing karaoke last week. I don't know.
I think the last time I was on stage was I gave probably a pest management talk. I'm trying to think. Now you got me going through my calendar. Yeah, I did. I did a couple trainings. I guess my biggest one would have been that I got to work with another colleague. We organized a symposia for our Entomological Society of America branch meeting, and so we were the two individuals that got to kind of introduce all of the speakers, give some background information. So I didn't really present anything there, but I was able to do all the introductions and make sure that everything ran smoothly.
Nice. Next question. Is there a part of a movie that you grew up with that traumatized you? Is there a certain scene?
Oh, movie maybe not, but I will say this is a person. Whoever knows me knows that I cannot stand crunchy things.
Okay.
Like stepping on crunchy things.
Okay.
And it's from a memory in my childhood. I used to have a friend who they lived like in a cabin, and the dad one day stepped on an American cockroach barefoot in front of, and I don't even know how old I was. I know that I was very young, but since then, I mean, if I something crunchy, I just like smushing insects. I don't like to do. Acorn season here in Texas.
Oh yeah, it's gotta be rough.
But that's probably like that's my trauma.
Well, here in North Texas, on that topic, we had a cricket infestation in about 1998 or so, 99 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so bad that they ended up having to turn a lot of the street lights out so they wouldn't congregate in the main roadways. It was disgusting.
And I've been joking with my colleagues because we haven't seen a cockroach, not cockroach, cricket apocalypse is what I like to call it.
Yeah.
I feel like we're due for one because they do cycle, every decade or so.
Like the locusts did or do?
Yeah. So crickets and the grasshoppers, they like to have that kind of dry season. So I want to say that we've gotten enough water that I don't think that we're going to expect a very large inflation, but that also occurs, further in the beginning of fall, late summer area. So
yeah. One final question. Go for it, Kev.
All right. What's the tallest building that you've ever been on top of?
Tallest building that I've ever been on top of. Ooh.
Maybe not on top of, maybe just the top floor.
Maybe the Stratosphere in Las Vegas. I don't even know if that's
It's pretty tall.
Yeah.
It's the tallest west of the Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well then there you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
I want to say it rivals the Space Needle. It's pretty tall.
Yeah, I really wanted to. They've got some rides up there. We ended up not being able to do it then, but yeah, I've been up there.
I rode the roller coaster that they originally had on it.
Oh yeah,
And
like Kings you are.
Yeah, it was like 3 loops. Basically, you just went around it 3 times, but it was incredibly terrifying.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then we did the one, it was the just up and down off basically the point of the building. That's what they had at that point.
Like the scream, or I don't even know what it's
Yeah,
called.
it just takes you up and down on what would look like a needle.
Yeah.
That was pretty bad. That was back in like 90, well, maybe 2000. Not long after it opened. Yeah, very tall building. You can jump off it now.
Yeah.
One day.
Why?
One day. Well, that's about it, Bryant. We appreciate your time and your knowledge on all things arthropods and insect.
Well, thank you so much for having me. If you guys ever have any other, questions that come out at you, feel free to reach out.
This is a good time. We appreciate it. We'll tag you in the Facebook posts and all that sort of stuff, and it'll be on all your podcast platforms.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Good deal. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Thank you, boss.
Y'all as well.
All right. Bye-bye.